Hey, and welcome back to another video from my Vintage Tech Showcase playlist, the playlist of videos where I showcase older electronic devices in a form of retro style review. And what we have here today is the Nokia 6600 from 2003, which was a very high-end business device from the 6000 series of Nokia devices. And in this video, we'll be going over all the details regarding the Nokia 6600 and see what it's like using it here in 2022. So this is the 2003 Nokia 6600 here in 2022. So as always, before jumping right in, don't forget to smash that like button down below as it helps this video get on YouTube's algorithm. And also don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and ring that bell notification button so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Also, if you have any questions or comments, don't forget to leave them down in the comment section below. We can start a discussion or I can answer your questions. My social media is also linked down in the description below, which includes Instagram, Discord, and Twitter. And now let's jump right into this video. Alright, so now let us start off with a bit of history on the 6600 itself. Now, it was launched with a hefty price tag of 600 euros, and that was probably one of the most expensive phones at the time, and it was Nokia's highest end device at the time, focused on business. It is also a phone that was considered as a milestone device. It was a phone to be looked up to. Other manufacturers had to directly compete with this thing. It's kind of like the iPhone 4 in 2010. Everyone else set that thing as an example for other phones. And the same goes for this thing. Other manufacturers had to look up to this phone and compete directly because it was just such a good phone. In the US, it also had its own variant called the 6620, which was released only for the US market. It had a few variations from this model as well, but this, as you can see, is the standard international model. And also, this thing is one of the best-selling phones of all time, selling a total of about 150 million units. It's definitely up there in the top 20 selling phones of all time. So 150 million units, because this phone was that good. And some sources that I've read online say that in some parts of the world, this phone is still being used quite heavily by some people because of its durability and its just simplicity as well. Despite being a complicated phone in some ways in terms of features, this phone is also very simple and there's nothing much on this phone that can break. And if you have a working battery, this thing is good to go. Again, it's another extremely durable Nokia device. So according to some sources, these devices are in use in some countries, especially Africa and etc., probably South Asia as well. These things are definitely something that could last the 20-year mark very easily come next year, because now it's 2022. In 2023 it's becoming exactly 20 years old. So definitely something that could last that age very easily, and as long as you have a working battery and a network that supports it, I don't see why you cannot use this for a basic phone, just for basic texting and calling purposes. But yeah, this phone definitely set the standard for a lot of devices at the time back in 2003. So it mainly came in this color, which is white and black, but there's also a fully black version, and for promotional purposes there was a blue one, a white one, and a pink one as well. I'll put some photos if I find them on screen here. Those are considerably more rare. I haven't seen them for sale that much. And another fun fact about this phone is that it had a 4-year production run from 2003 to 2007, and that's a very long time to produce one simple product, and that's because this thing was so popular. And it also contributed to the fact that it sold 150 million units. So this phone was definitely a milestone and a very popular device that set the standard for Nokia, or basically set its own new standard, because Nokia was already up there and no one could really compete apart from Motorola. But Nokia set its own standard even higher with the release of this phone. So that's just a quick bit of history on the Nokia 6600. Definitely a milestone device, definitely one of Nokia's greatest devices. And here's another fun fact: this thing is also known as the egg phone because it's roughly the size of a large egg and kind of looks like an oval. So yeah, it does have that egg look to it. So it's known as the egg phone. So yeah, that's just a fun fact. So yeah, that's just a bit of history on the Nokia 6600. Alright, so now it is time to have a quick go around of the device. Now up front, as you can see, I already mentioned, I think, the shape of the phone. This is called the egg phone. It kind of looks like a large egg with this slight oval shape there. We have the Nokia branding over here and the earpiece. We have the display over there, a bunch of buttons on either side. This is the menu button over there. Then we have the joystick and the keypad over here. And then moving on to this side, as you can see, we have the belt clip lock thing here, and also here as well to lock it into the belt holster. At the top, we really don't have much apart from the power button, as you can see there. Kind of similar to a 3310's power button. It's very long, but the button is only on this side. This is just there for just aesthetic purposes. Moving on to this side again, the belt locks over there, and we have the infrared port over there as well, which is nice to see. It has an infrared sensor or infrared receiver / transmitter. Then we have the fat barrel charger, or the older style barrel charger over there, and we have our 2.5mm headphone jack over there as well, and the microphone hole there as well. Moving on to the back of the phone, we have the place to press down and pull off the back cover. We have this ring-like thing that encircles the camera. It kind of continues with the back door-like thing when you lock it in place. It says VGA 3.5mm 1x2.8 aperture, and there's your single VGA camera without a flash, and we have Nokia branding over there, and the speaker is also over here as well, as you can see there. In terms of build quality, now, like I mentioned earlier, this phone is still used in some parts of the world, and that is because, for one reason, this thing is extremely well built. It's the definition of a extremely tough Nokia device. I'd say it's almost as well built as the legendary 3310. Of course, it's more heavier than the 3310, but this thing can easily take a lot of drops and not break. I mentioned earlier in one of my previous videos, there is a thing with these older Nokias is that if you look closely, the gap between the plastic and the actual display, I don't know if that's coming up on camera, is actually quite a lot. The gap between the display and the actual plastic. So if you even crack the plastic, you can replace this faceplate and without basically damaging the display, and you're good to go. So yeah, in terms of build quality, it's really solid. It also feels great in the hand because it's quite small. Of course, it's kind of like an egg. Feels great in the hand. It's really handy. It's a really nice phone overall. Solid build quality. Looks unique. Looks sort of like an egg, and was the definition of premium status back in the early 2000s if you wanted a Nokia device. I mean, there was no other competition. Motorola was competing, but still, if you wanted premium, you go for Nokia. And this was definitely one of the key players at the time, and one of the many great options available by Nokia. So the display on this thing for 2003 was a high-end display, I guess, but of course, being a 65,000 color display, you couldn't really expect too much from it. But for its time, for what it is, it got the job done. Now, being a TFT LCD display, again, with 65,000 colors, the colors aren't overly accurate. They're, of course, oversaturated to make them look better. And it's just what it was at the time. And it was perfectly usable, perfectly acceptable, probably a better display from the time, because I've seen considerably worse displays than this from 2003. So they actually had to put a really good, well, comparatively really good display on this thing for the price tag they were asking for this phone. So like I said, TFT LCD, 65,000 colors. It's a 2.1 inch display, so 2.1 inches diagonally like that, with a resolution of 176 by 208 pixels, so 176 by 208, which gives it a pixel density of about 130 pixels per inch. And using it here in 2022, I mean, I've used displays like this before, so it's not a big deal for me. But I mean, I can see why it'll get a little bit getting used to after coming from OLEDs and AMOLEDs in modern times. But for me, it was just perfectly fine. Another good thing about this display is also that it's extremely bright. Now, this is medium brightness, but as you can see, it's very bright. So it's a very bright display, so that's good. The backlighting is really good on this thing. Like I said, the colors aren't overly accurate. They're oversaturated and stuff, but hey, it is what it is. For its time, it was a high-end display, but if you appreciate the older devices like this, this display will just feel definitely at home, and that's basically what it is for me. I'm very used to stuff like this at this point, running this channel using older phones, so it is what it is. But for its time, it was a very high-end display on a very, very expensive phone. Now, in terms of internal specifications, I should remind you that this thing was called a smartphone in 2003, but by 2022 standards, this is definitely not a smartphone. But by 2003 standards, this is these days it'll be mostly known as a feature phone, basically a phone with smartphone features, but not entirely there. But by 2003, this was considered a smartphone. Now, the internal specs on this thing, starting off with the processor, which is a 104 megahertz Texas Instruments, most likely ARM9 processor. So I say most likely Texas Instruments because Nokia contracted out a lot of their processor manufacturing to Texas Instruments at the time. So 104 megahertz single core ARM9, most likely a Texas Instruments processor. It has 6 megs of internal storage, and it came with a 32 megabyte MMC chip as well, so a large MMC chip. I'll show you that at the end when we open the battery bay. So it shipped with a 32 megabyte expansion chip as well. I think it can go up to 128 megabytes. If I find that information, I'll put it up there, but it's most likely up to 128 megabytes if you could buy a larger chip. But those chips at the time were very, very expensive. We have it nicely in modern times with micro SD cards being so cheap, but back in the day, solid state memory was so expensive, hence why some phones used micro hard drives, and iPods also used micro hard drives because solid state memory in large capacities was quite expensive. This thing also has 25 voice command slots if you need voice memos, and also it has your basic entries and stuff into your phone book, probably about 1,000 entries up, 1,000 entries down. And yeah, in terms of internal specs, this is not a powerhouse by any standards. By 2003 standards, no one really spoke about power. It was around 2011 when the Motorola Atrix came out is when really power was a discussion. The Motorola Atrix technically kicked off the race to be the most powerful phone, but before that, power wasn't really discussed. It was more of the features. No one really discussed, oh yeah, that thing has a dual core processor, this thing has that thing has this. Power wasn't a discussion. It was more towards features, but for its time, the specs on this thing were, I guess, adequate. Alright, so now let us jump into the operating system, and the OS that this thing is running is Symbian 7.0 Series 60, the second edition. So 7.0 Symbian Series 60 second edition, and the specific one that this phone is running, let's do *#0000#. There you go, that's the version and the year. This one was last updated in 2004, so it's running an older version. Like I said, this phone was produced until 2007, and it probably got an update until like 2008-ish, so this phone is definitely out of date, but it's good to have one on an older OS like this, just to see what it's like. I'll probably get another one later and see if that thing's running a newer version, but this is a 2004 version, so it's considerably older. But as you can see, your old school, good old Symbian, nothing new here. If you're a regular on this channel, you know all this stuff. We always go over this stuff. It's your pretty regular stuff. Basically, you have your memory, you have your extras and stuff here, your wallet, your memory, blah, 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 blah. This thing had at some point more business tools, but I cannot find them. Maybe the previous owner erased them. This thing definitely came with more stuff, but I've been looking and I couldn't find all the other business features this phone shipped with, but maybe the previous owner erased them. But here's your main menu. So camera, video recorder, they were separate at the time, which is quite interesting. Messaging, contact, calendars, log, connect, gallery, camera, video recorder, real player. So that's something you don't see that much anymore. Infrared, Bluetooth, connection manager, modem, sync, and stuff like that. And yes, this thing has an infrared sensor somewhere. Where is that thing? Where is it? Where's the infrared on this thing? I've been looking. There it is. There we go. So that's your infrared sensor there. So this thing does have infrared as well. Connection manager, modem, blah, 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 sync and stuff like that. Real player, again, you can go into that. That's the main video player on this phone. It still works just fine. Real player was a staple on older Nokia devices. Well, not even older, right until like 2012. Real player was still on Nokia phones. We have manager, themes, and all that stuff as well. Manager is empty. Let's go into themes. We can switch some themes up here. This phone is on T-Mobile, so we can preview that. There you go. That's the T-Mobile theme with the slight pinkish color. Theme 3. That's more of a gray. This is the most common theme I've seen, the gray theme. And theme 2 is the one we've been using. Let's preview theme 1. It's also somewhat of a purple-ish, I'd say. It looks gray on the camera, but it's more light purple in reality. And then we have the default theme as well. We can go into that. That is the default theme, I guess. Is that Tom Cruise? I don't know why that goes to the default theme as that. I don't know if that's... What is that, honestly? I don't think there's a default theme. I don't know. I've had that question as well, but whatever. So to-do list, go to, etc, etc. We have games over here, so we have Snake X and Mix Picks as well. We can go into settings. Where is settings? Where's settings? Oh, it's probably on the tools. There we go. Tools, settings. And then you have your basic settings like that. As you can see, we don't have the side to side. We have only this going up and down. We do have that when you have your memory card in. You can switch side to side in photos. Let me show you that. But in settings, we don't have the side to side thing. Where's that gallery? So as you can see here, opening files, you have the side to side thing. You can switch to memory card or phone memory like that. So yeah, that's just your simple Symbian OS, the good old Symbian Series 60, Series version 7, Symbian version 7 Series 60 second edition. It's just the naming is a bit off, but that's how Nokia named their devices, or Symbian named their OSs. But yeah, that's just a quick look at the operating system. Nothing new. You guys have already seen this in multiple previous videos because the basic layout is generally the same. Now it is time for a quick game demo. Now this thing has Snake X and Mix Picks. I'm pretty sure it had Mo, but the previous owner may have deleted them. But then again, this is a business phone. It wasn't really focused on entertainment per se. So options, one player, maze 2. And I noticed in this game, the main target is a goat. As you can see, that looks like a goat. And the prize target is a bug. There you go. Looks like a bug. Let's get to the goat. There you go. There you go. Again, the prize target or the bonus target is a bug, not like an apple, or I mean it varied from year to year, but now the main target's a goat and the prize target's a bug. So there we go. The goat. Let's go back to the bug. Let's try and get him. Barely missed him. Where are they? At the bottom. Okay. So the only audio you get is just the booping sound, like when you, that sound. So yeah, that's just basically Snake X. You know how it is. But yeah, so that was the quick game demo. So the camera on this thing is, of course, as you can see, a simple VGA camera without a flash. As you can see, VGA 3.5mm 1x2.8 aperture. So those are the camera specs, pretty basic. This is its video recording capability. I forgot off the top of my head. That is its video recording capability, the resolution and all that stuff. And it's only limited to 10-second clips. So you can get only 10-second clips out of this thing. That was common at the time. And now let's go into the interface, the camera interface. Actually, the camera and the video camera are separate, as you can see there. So camera, it's quite basic. This was not a photo focused phone. Nokia didn't really focus on photography in the very early 2000s because camera technology in mobile phones were really limited. The 3650 was another phone that had a camera. They did promote it, but of course the photo quality was not that great, and point and shoot cameras was still dominant. But still, as you can see, these are the options. We have image quality default, image name, and memory in use. You just simply press this to take a photo, and then you can go into video recording as well. and you have similar options under settings, blah 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 blah, video size and all of that stuff. Something I forgot to show you also, camera, you have standard, you have portrait, you have night mode, which it's okay, and you can also do portrait like that, but basically portrait is a crop, it's not proper portrait, but it is what it is. So now let's go ahead and I'll show you some camera samples and video samples I took during the day with this phone, and they're okay, of course, for a phone like this from so many years ago. They're okay, they get the job done, but remember, this is such an old phone, don't expect too much from the photos. Of course, they're not going to be HD quality and all that stuff, but put yourself in the shoes of an owner of this phone in the early 2000s and then kind of judge the images based on that. So here are the photo and video samples. Alright, so as you saw with those photo and video samples, they look okay. I mean, for the time, that's what you can expect. Anyway, we can now do a ringtone and speaker demo, and I must note that I will be doing a full ringtones video on this from my nostalgic ringtones playlist, so stay tuned for all the ringtones. In this video, we'll play some of the ringtones, not all of them, in the interest of time, but let's go ahead and go here. I think some of these ringtones are copyrighted, I cannot tell. Let's do max ringing volume, and yes, select max volume. Here we go again. What is that? I think that is copyrighted. Let's try and keep it to the Nokia ringtones. Okay, so as you saw, those were some of the ringtones. Of course, we'll do the full ringtones video in a few weeks' time, so definitely stay tuned for that. But yeah, the speaker is quite decent on this thing. Of course, it's not a stereo speaker setup or anything like that. It's decently loud, but I think it's louder. This one is a bit clogged up with dust. I gotta clean it later, so it may be a bit louder, but it is quite clear and not too tinny. It's overall a pretty decent speaker for the time, and that is what it is. Now going to some extra features on this thing. Of course, this was a business focused phone. It did have a lot of business related stuff already built into it, but I cannot find any of them. Maybe they were under extras at some point, but maybe the previous owner deleted them. I know this thing had a bunch of PDF readers and all that stuff built in, but they seem to have been deleted maybe. These are a lot of software stuff, by the way, and of course you could download more or sideload more of these, but these are what's remaining. Maybe the previous owner just bought this phone because he liked it and he didn't really care about the business features and maybe just deleted them. Apart from that, in terms of hardware, of course, I showed you it has an infrared port, so you can send and receive business cards and stuff like that. Of course, you couldn't do too much with it, but at the time, sending and receiving business cards digitally was quite a big deal. There were some older phones from the late 90s as well that Nokia had. The 8210 also had a infrared port, so it could do business card transactions and swaps and stuff like that. So if you wanted that, you had that. This thing also has Bluetooth 1.1, and it doesn't seem to have radio or Wi-Fi or anything like that. There's no Wi-Fi, no radio, nothing of the sort. It does have a browser, but of course at this age I didn't demo the browser because it's almost impossible to get service on this phone, and since it has no Wi-Fi, but it does have a browser. As you can see there under services, it's a simple WAP 2.0 browser if you need be. Of course, it has a mono audio player as well, which is built in terms of software, and apart from that, everything else is generally considered digital on this phone. Everything else in terms of hardware, there isn't many features to display. All the main things on this phone were digital, downloadable features in terms of business and stuff, but in terms of hardware it doesn't really have too much. So now let us go ahead and talk about the battery and power. Alright, so we're here in the battery bay, and let me bring it closer. So as you can see, I've covered up the IMEI number and all that stuff. So model come on, focus, there we go. Model 6600, type NHL-10, made in Finland. So this phone is made in Finland, and here's the 32 megabyte MMC card that I told you about. This is of course not micro SD, it's MMC, the old style. Surprisingly, some micro SD cards these days still come with the micro SD to MMC adapter for conversion for older laptops that still use that old port, but yeah, you have that option. And there's the SIM card. This is a double slider to both hold down the SIM card and the MMC card, and that SIM card is Telkomcel. Now Telkomcel, that is an Indonesian service provider. So this phone is, where's the back cover? This thing, as you can see, is T-Mobile. So there you go, the T-Mobile logo. It has been scratched off, but it's a T-Mobile phone. So what's a Telkomcel doing on this thing? Telkomcel SIM doing in this thing? So maybe it was unlocked and taken to Indonesia, but what is it doing back in the US? I have no idea. Maybe it was brought back to the US at some point. I bought this phone from the US as well, it was here, but it has a Telkomcel SIM. Maybe it was unlocked and a tourist bought it, maybe a tourist from Indonesia, I don't know. But regardless, here's the battery. It's your good old BL5C. You've already seen this thing. This one is a 1020 milliamp hour battery, and with this battery it has a standby time of about 240 hours and a talk time of about 4.5 hours. So at the time, that was really good performance. Of course, that's what you can expect from a business phone from Nokia. But you know, if you reduce the brightness and all that stuff, it could last longer. We all know how older Nokias work in terms of battery. Those are just the official numbers, but I'm pretty sure this thing's battery lasted much longer when you use it on a day-to-day basis, depending on what you did. Probably into even the 6 hours of talking time, for all we know, because older Nokia devices like this, we all know how long the batteries actually lasted versus the official results. Nowadays, most batteries are under performing in some phones, not of course higher end phones, but lower end phones, batteries usually underperform, but these, they used to overperform over the manufacturer and tested specs. But that is what it is. But regardless, we have come to the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you honestly did, don't forget to smash that like button down below. And if you honestly like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and ring that bell notification button so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. My social media is linked down in the description below, which includes Instagram, Discord, and Twitter. Thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in my next video.